I'm going to try a saddle first. We've done this horse's measurements. I know my points of reference. The A is 12.5 and the B is 26. So this tells me this horse will probably, particularly in view of this measurement, be a medium wide. But I'm going to put on a medium to start with, just to show how it's likely to sit. Now we know that the points of the saddle must not sit further forward than this, where this white line is here, where we drew the wither template. Now, the shape of that saddle tells me that that saddle will wear like that. It's too narrow for this horse. So we will, in fact, try immediately go to what I think will fit it, which will be the medium wide. Right, points in the right place, far enough back on this white line. Now that's all sitting up quite high, but the pommel-cantle relationship is better, and I usually reckon 2 fingers on top of the pommel, draw a parallel line, and you should get the cantle. This is in an average general purpose saddle. Obviously, if you've got a deep cantled saddle, you have to make allowances for that. Equally, something which has got barely any cantle at all and flat, that could be level. But on this particular saddle, which certainly doesn't have a high cantle, it's our advanced competitor jumping saddle, I expect this to be about 1 inch higher than that. So we are looking at that. Equally, we have to keep it behind the shoulder. Now, this is going to sit high. This is a new saddle, but still we have contact throughout the panel, all the way through. There are no gaps, so that tells me that when we've girthed it, when we've weighted it, that the weight should be taken as sympathetically as we can on the horse's back. Where you get into a lot of trouble with this kind of horse is this shoulder. Now, if the shoulder, and this does, on a forward cut jumping saddle, that's the first point of contact. The saddle is going to sit up quite high, and it can get distorted as the shoulder comes back as the horse is moving. This particular saddle, the points sit outside the tree. I've never found anything that's worked better than this. And there is a line here, so that there's a break. As this saddle is used, and we will be looking at one that actually is being used at the moment on this horse, that breaks, and that allows the horse's scapula, shoulder to come back when they're working, doing fast work, doing jumping, but it doesn't do this on the horse's back. And this is a wider version of the same saddle. And this again, we're going to meet this, first of all, so it's almost going to look in balance on the horse. And we're seeing also that the weight is not going further back. That really looks quite reasonable, but I can assure you, and we'll watch it being ridden in later on, that because this is so wide here, as that settles on the horse's back, what will happen is the weight will come too far forward and it will start to do that. When you see a saddle leaving the horse's back when giving you a round of applause like this, that saddle is not right for the horse. It is too wide, or there's insufficient support further down underneath the saddle here. I just want to point out that the design at the front of this saddle, it's quite deeply cut the panel, and this allows your saddle fitter to keep sufficient flocking here to support the front of the saddle and prevent excessive movement at the back. We know that this horse's conformation will predispose the saddle to take more wear over the front third, so this is an important feature. These quilting stitches just in front of the points allow a natural break, and the horse's shoulder can move quite freely without destabilising the back of the saddle. It means that we can put on a saddle with a really forward leg projection to accommodate longer legs, which is our brief today. This next saddle has a tree which would be quite suitable to try on this horse, but does not have such a deeply cut panel at the front. I know that there will be insufficient support to prevent this saddle getting sucked in too tight behind the shoulder, thus destroying the balance and allowing the back of the saddle to move up and down or roll. Equally, this is a general purpose saddle, not nearly so forward cut. So here we have the more deeply cut panel offering more support, and then this saddle offering much less. Right, put some leathers on a saddle that we know should go on this horse nicely. And this is the medium wide forward leg. We know that we're checking clearance, which has to be adequate, contact, which has to be throughout the saddle equal, and here that the weight is not taken beyond the last 18th thoracic vertebrae. So in actual fact, we are ready to go now to test ride this saddle, because the other dimension that we have to think about is that the second the horse moves, everything changes. And depending on how it works, then we have to adjust the saddle fit accordingly. That's why for this horse, I expect this saddle with a lot of support across the front, because that's the way he's going to wear it. We've got balance. Balance is crucial. I would say it's almost 90% of saddle fitting. Without balance, you're going nowhere, no matter what else you've got. You can't lift the saddle at the front and at the back to get the balance and not have the contact, but, which is something that we see, you can very often lift a saddle with a shim, with a pad, not at the back. That's quite a dangerous thing to do, because you're forcing these points further into this muscle, which can cause loss. But to lift the front is not a great sin and works often, particularly if you're lifting the saddle into balance. That is something that can make a saddle which is a fraction too wide actually work better. You're better to have the flocking within the confines of the saddle, that way it can't slip. But if that's not an option, there are all sorts of things on the market that can be used just to raise the saddle at the front and keep our weight here in the lowest part of the saddle.